All right, let's dive in. Today we're looking at something pretty fascinating. How one of the most influential figures in history managed to shape an entire community he never even met. And get this, that long-distance relationship ended up sparking a huge ethical challenge that, believe it or not, we're still grappling with thousands of years later.
So here's the central question, and it kind of sounds like a riddle, doesn't it? You've got the Apostle Paul, a major figure for the early Christians in the city of Colossae. But the real puzzle? All the historical evidence says he never actually went there, not once. So how on earth did he become so central to their story? Well, that's the mystery we're going to unravel.
To figure this out, we've got to start with the core paradox here. Paul's massive, yet totally unseen influence. It's a really cool case study in how ideas can travel and just take root in ways you'd never expect.
I mean, think about how wild this is for the time. In the ancient world, influence was all about being there in person. You had to show up. But in Colossae, you have this vibrant, growing community that sees Paul as their spiritual mentor. This wasn't just some distant respect, it was a deep personal connection, all happening without him ever making a single visit.
So if he wasn't there, how did it happen? Was it just a fluke? No, not at all. It turns out there was a very deliberate and, frankly, incredibly effective strategy at play. It's like this brilliant ripple effect, and we can actually trace it step by step.
See, the key wasn't Paul trying to run around and be everywhere at once. Nope, he focused his energy on one place, Ephesus. You can think of Ephesus back then like a huge international hub today, a crossroads of trade, culture, and new ideas for the whole Roman province. So by setting up shop there, Paul wasn't just talking to the locals, he was talking to the world.
And here's that strategy laid out. It's a simple, three-step chain reaction. First, Paul establishes his base in that major hub. Second, a man from Colossae, a guy named Epaphras, hears him speak, and it completely changes his life. And third, well, Epaphras does the most natural thing in the world. He takes his life-changing message and carries it back home. Paul didn't need to go to Colossae because he empowered a Colossian to go for him. It's brilliant.
And we know this isn't just a guess, because Paul tells us himself. Right here, in his letter to the Colossians, he points to Epaphras as the guy who brought them the message. He calls him a dear fellow servant and a faithful minister. Epaphras is the key. He's the one who took that spark from Ephesus and lit a fire in Colossae.
Okay, so we know how the message got there, but what kind of place was Colossae? What was it like? Let's zoom in a bit on the city itself and get a feel for the world these new believers were trying to figure out.
Colossae was a really complex spot. It was in a region of modern-day Turkey, and it was a total melting pot of cultures. You had a big Jewish community living right alongside people worshiping all sorts of different pagan gods. So for this brand new Christian community, it was not an easy place to be. They were totally surrounded by competing beliefs and some pretty intense cultural pressures.
And just to give you a sense of the scale here, think about this number, 10,000. That was the estimated number of Jewish men in the wider region. So we're not talking about a small group. This was a very established and influential community, and a huge part of the cultural landscape that folks like Epaphras were navigating every single day.
All right, this is where the story takes a sharp turn. We're going from the big picture of the city to the really intimate drama happening inside a single home. Because it's right here, in this small community Paul never visited, that one of the most personal and difficult situations imaginable starts to unfold.
So there are three people at the heart of this. First, you have Philemon, a leader in the Colossian church. Then there's Onesimus, who was Philemon's slave. And finally, there's Paul. He's in prison, miles and miles away. But he ends up right in the middle of this conflict when Onesimus, the runaway, shows up on his doorstep.
The situation itself is pretty simple, but it is just loaded with tension. Onesimus ran away from Philemon. Under Roman law, that was a huge deal. Philemon had every legal right to punish him and punish him severely. But the fact that both the master and the slave now share this new Christian faith, well, that changes everything.
And this is what sets the stage for Paul to step in. Because what he's about to ask Philemon to do is going to put the ethics of their new faith on a collision course with the laws and social structure of the entire Roman Empire. This is faith versus the law.
I mean, just look at the contrast here. It is stark. Roman law was crystal clear. Onesimus was property. Philemon's rights as an owner were absolute. But Paul's appeal just throws that whole idea out the window. He doesn't argue legal points. He appeals to something much higher. He asks Philemon to welcome Onesimus back not as property, but as family,
as a brother.
And here it is, in Paul's own words. This is the heart of it. He's calling for a complete reinvention of their relationship. He's telling Philemon, stop seeing him through the lens of Roman law or social status. See him through the lens of our shared faith, where labels like master and slave just get replaced by brother.
This incredibly personal appeal brings us to our final point. Because this ancient letter, this note written to solve one problem in one household, leaves us with a really difficult and lingering question, one that feels very modern.
And here's the tension, right? For us today, it can be really troubling that Paul doesn't just come out and condemn the entire institution of slavery. He doesn't call for abolition. Instead, he works within the system. But he also completely guts its moral foundation. By calling a slave a beloved brother, he's giving him a level of humanity that makes that whole master-slave relationship basically impossible to justify.
And so, this ancient story leaves us right here with this incredibly powerful question. Was Paul's approach a smart, pragmatic strategy to change hearts and minds from the inside? Or was it a moral failure to not just condemn the whole rotten system? Honestly, it's a debate that is still going on, and it just shows how a personal letter, started by a ripple of influence, can force us, even now, to confront our deepest values.